So, this is very exciting. In an act of altruism and downright kind-hearted generosity, I have Phil, better known to the rest of the world as Patrick Hillier, and the second cousin, great nephew or something of Boardwalk Empire and Big Lebowski fame, Steve Buscemi, Eric Buscemi. Good afternoon, gentlemen. So I'm got you both on here today because how long has this been running now? About 4 months, 5 months?
Yep. Yeah. The official, we did a soft launch about a month before Origins, but then the official launch and announcement for Punchboard Media was at Origins.
Yeah. So we're talking today about Punchboard Media, and I guess the best way to start is have one of you explain what it is.
Sure. I'll take that one. Punchboard Media is, it's a network or a conglomeration, whatever word you'd like to use, of a number of smaller board game media content creators. It's audio podcasts, video casts, and some written content and photography content. Now, it's been live for, probably, like you said, 4 or 5 months, but maybe 3 or 4 months before then, or even depending on, how far you want to go back into the original idea stage when it was just chatter. But, we all decided that, we could we all hang out online. Like, if you're on Twitter, you probably notice, or Board Game Geek too, you probably notice a lot of people that make media just chat with each other and go on each other's shows and do guest stuff and do collaborations and at conventions and stuff. And we said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could formalize that, in a way and do stuff together? And then we could create some content together and we could promote each other's content because, when I write, and I do written stuff. I'm an editor by trade, so I do not have the face for video that Paul Grogan does, for example. But so when I
don't believe in people, he's gorgeous.
Oh no, there was no sarcasm in my comment, and he's got the accent too, like you. You British people kill me.
Oh, he's from the north. He sounds nothing like me. I'm far more.
I'm not refined enough to know the difference, but yeah. So when I write a written review of something, it's cool for me to be able to say, hey, also check out this podcast where they talk. Because when you're doing a conversational podcast, you're able to talk about a whole lot of stuff that I'm not able to easily write down in a concise review. Or I could say, hey, check out this video, or someone did a how to play or a run through of it, and then they could get a real feel of the pieces moving about and how the board setup is that I can't do in a review. And it's just cool to be able to do that. So yeah, go
So
on.
before we go back to the origin, tell us sort of who makes up what's the best term for it? Media conglomeration, media organization. Who makes it up? Is it just Americans? Is it people from all over the world? Do you have particular criteria that people have to fulfill before they become?
Yeah,
members?
sure. It is international. We have it is mostly in North America, but that's the United States, Canada, and Mexico. But then we also have some European, and we even just added in a contributor from South Africa. So, we're working on being as international as we can because we think having different perspectives from across the globe is super interesting and not just being an echo chamber of, what's going on in America or Ohio, where there's a huge board game. I know Patrick could talk about that scene. But yeah, so that's so we're definitely international. As for, how people joined, do you want to go into the origin now? Because I'm probably going to have to go back to, yeah.
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning and explain, how it was birthed, who had the initial idea, and how it came to be what it is.
Sure.
Today.
Sure. So, originally, I contribute to the What Did You Play This Week podcast, as does Patrick, and that was part of an older network called the Pathological Nerdcasters Network. And there were a few members in that, and Cloak and Meeple, Docking Bay 94, Doc Logan, and Spaghetti and Meeples were all part of that. But they weren't doing a lot to promote it. It wasn't very active. It was just a thing, and it was what it was. And I was talking to Brandon and I said, hey, we could do more to revitalize this and add to it. We have a lot of other friends. And I mean, so many of them were already contributing to the What Did You Play This Week podcast. Like both Travis and Donnie from Low Player Count were contributing to What Did You Play This Week. Craig from Botch Games was contributing to What Did You Play This Week. Draft Mechanic had done bits for the 30 minutes around the table, as had the Mile High Game Guys. So there was a lot of people already involved. And I said, we could just ask all of these people that we're already doing stuff with if they just like to formalize this. And then we said, well, if we're going to do that, let's ask some other people. And like, that's how we asked Katie from Katie's Game Corner and some other people that we, Ken Grazier of Geekcraft, Charles, Hagasawa. I'm sorry, Charles, from Things of No Interest. Oh, and Bill from The Cubist, who was also contributing to What Did You Play This Week? And we said, hey, let's, I was surprised because I'm the one that shot out the original emails and Twitter DMs, and I kind of thought it would be like people would be like, yeah, but no, that's too much effort, or it's what's the upside of it? But everyone was so positive about it, and also so many people had said, hey, that's something I'd already thought of doing, and that was kind of the moment when I realized I must be onto something. If like 10 people have told me that's already something they considered doing. So that's kind of how it started, as friends of What Did You Play This Week and people that were already in the What Did You Play This Week's older, less active network, the Pathological Nerdcasters network. So that's how it started. And then we've done like one round of additions, and that was right ahead of Gen Con, because when we launched, other people came to us and said, hey, we really like what you're doing. We'd like to be a part of this. So then I was just like, well, here's our mission statement, because I don't want anyone joining just for the sake of like, oh, I'll get some extra promotion, because one of the we're not doing this for any monetary reason. As long as I'm part of this, we're not going to run a Patreon or a Kickstarter and now each of the individual entities is more than welcome to run their own stuff. And I'm totally supportive of that, because I know that hosting fees are a very real thing. And so is, creating logos and being able to do giveaways and stuff. But as far as the network, it's one cost to host it for a whole year. And we split it up. It wound up being like $10 per person, and we all chipped in. So this has actually cost us each a few bucks, but totally worth it. And the mission statement. Yeah. So the point of this, like I said, it's not monetary. It was just to do something supportive, to do something inclusive, to do something that could bring people together and just be a positive influence in the community, and I think our hobby has a great community. So I just want to do something to help further that. And so far, so good, I hope. Please give me feedback. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. I would love to hear it.
So, Patrick, what was your initial thought when this was presented to you? And what do you feel that you get from being a part of this?
As part of the failed is the wrong word. A previous network, I was a little dubious. Eric was newer to the show and had a little bit more faith that it was going to work. So I kind of went along for the ride, but it worked well. Eric really ran with it and did a great job. I liked the idea of sharing and working together. I'm a big fan of collaboration. And like he said, I'm all over the place. Somebody introduced me to at Gen Con. This is Patrick. He's on everything. Like, that was pretty funny. But anyway, one thing he hasn't mentioned is the Slack channel. We have a huge Punchboard Media Slack channel that is just a great place for collaboration, just amongst ourselves, for sharing information and where did you do this? How did you do that? So that was really kind of the point of it. It's not just getting that information out to the public in a way. So our website's a great aggregator of all this information, and you can search and say, okay, how many different entities talked about this game? And it'll come up with, if Eric took pictures of it and the other Eric wrote, yeah. If Eric Yurko's pictures and Eric Buscemi's blog wrote about it, and if Maltman talked about it on a audio podcast. All those links will show up on the main site, so it kind of aggregates it all together. But then in our own private Slack or whatever the public Slack is this whole other thing that goes on, and which is a great collaboration between us. And then other great things have happened where I think we've just, as a group, have gotten more notice from publishers where we wouldn't get them as our smaller little bits. So when we did the Origins meetup, we got a ton of games for free to give out, to have a meetup, to try to kind of, hey, we're here. Let's all get together and say hi to each other and our friends and give away some games. And we had more games than we could give away.
Yeah, I remember walking down to that Origins meetup with Patrick, and he has his little red wagon that was filled with all these game giveaways. And he's like, Eric, don't be disappointed if no one comes. And I was like, Patrick, we have like 20 people coming that are literally part of the network. Even if no one else comes, we'll be hanging out with 20 people. and then, over 100 people came, and a lot of people that are like big in the hobby, came to support us. And that was wonderful to see support from, from Rodney of Watch It Played and Tiffany Cares and so many other people, and it was great. And we gave away a lot of games and introduced everyone. I mean, and the thing was, everyone knew at least one of us anyway, because as so many different entities,
I taught
the hobby's not that big. Right. You're going to know someone that makes content in their network, would be my guess, not to be smug.
I taught the Fluffy Meeples. Go ahead.
And that was going to be, and that was going to be my next question. What's the industry's reaction been to you as an organization?
I mean, of the feedback we've gotten, it's been almost entirely positive. As Patrick alluded to earlier, we have had a lot of publishers and designers have reached out to us and said, hey, I have a game coming out. I have a Kickstarter coming out. I want to get copies into your hands, and then you can review them and pass them around and talk about them. So whereas, it's very rare, although it does happen occasionally, but it's rare where someone will come to me with my little blog and say, hey, I want to give you a copy of my new game to review. With this network, there's been a lot of that going on, and it's great because, like I said, we're not making any money, but it's nice to at least be able to get new games and not have it cost more money to have stuff to review, and really enjoying that from that perspective. And we've been it's also cool because if a lot of us all get the same game, it gives us a lot more chances for collaboration. Like Ken Grazier has done a video where we all did a first impressions of the game Spires, because a bunch of us had gotten copies from Brian at Nevermore Games, and that was great to be able to do it. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have that publisher support. And we're actually going to do a follow-up video now that we've all got to play it a bunch of times and give a more in-depth look at it. So that's great content that was, facilitated basically because we do exist as a network.
And so what was the inspiration for a network? Are you basing yourselves off the Dice Tower network? Or, I guess they're the sort of ones that are the most present within the hobby. How does Punchboard Media differentiate itself from that? Or are you concerned about it at all?
Well, I can't lie. The Dice Tower is something that is there, and it was definitely something that was brought up a lot when we were starting this. They are the 5-ton elephant in the industry, and I don't think anything we're doing is trying to take away from that in any way. And, I watch some of their content. Sometimes I enjoy it. I'm friends with people in the Dice Tower network. So this isn't an us versus them thing at all. I just think there's enough room for two different entities. But the differentiating factors are, one, our network is not a monetary making venture, unlike theirs, and good for them that they were able to make careers out of it. But I don't think anyone in our network is looking to do that. And then I would say we based ourselves from start on trying to be inclusive and diverse and have, like you notice, an international element to the show, and try and feature women when we can, add them to the show and promote their voices. So I think that's another differentiation that we've tried to make.
So there's a lot of talk at the moment. This seems to be a big preoccupation within the hobby about diversity, about inclusivity. And I guess I've got two questions. Kind of, what are you doing to help that, and what does that mean to you? What does inclusivity? What is your goal? But what does it mean?
Sure. So, what are we trying to? Well, like I said, one thing we're trying to do is add and promote female voices and minority voices when we can, as much as we can. Another thing I started doing right from the beginning was an interview series called In Focus Women of Board Gaming. And that's women that are in the industry. Every week I run an interview with one of them. And it's not about the fact that they're women. I'm not asking questions like, well, as a woman, how does this make you feel? Or, as a woman, how do you design? It's just like, hey, you're a woman. We want to give you a chance to promote yourself and your work. The questions are all about, the hot new games they're making, their jobs as artists, as designers, as publishers, stuff like that. So that's.
Do you think board gaming is guilty of underrepresenting people? And do you think it's better or worse than other sort of comparable forms of art?
I think it can be guilty of underrepresenting women and minorities, but I also do think it is a majority white male hobby. Mm-hmm. But that's something. I have a 7-year-old daughter, so and she loves to play games with me. She's one of my primary gaming partners. I just taught her Sagrada last night. So, but, and she beat me, by the way, when I was teaching her. Neither here nor there. I'm not embarrassed at all. But yeah, so for me, I just want to make sure that when my daughter grows up, that if she wants to continue gaming and, goes away to college or whatever, and there's a gaming club, I want to make sure as much as I can, in whatever respect I can as a father that won't be there, that there is a place for her and that she's accepted and that it is a comfortable place. As for how it compares to other hobbies, I mean, the obvious comparison is the video game hobby. I do think board games are better about being inclusive than video games, but that doesn't mean there's not still work that can be done to make it even better still. So yeah, I think it's better, but it could be better still.
Yeah. Excellent. So you have your organization, it's puttering along. It seems to be quite apparent you're getting new members all the time. What's the end game? What's the future? What do you want it to be in 5 years, 10 years?
Well, as for adding members all the time, I don't think we're looking to keep adding members at speed. To the point we had one batch of people that we added, and we said at this point we are going to stop until at least next year, just to take stock and to make sure we're comfortable with what we're doing, to make sure that we're not getting too big too fast, to make sure that we're all gelling and all, getting along and working together. We don't want to just keep adding and adding and adding, and then all of a sudden we have a big mishmash and people aren't on the same page and we're not, it has to be fun. At the end of the day, it has to be fun. So we're not going to just add for the sake of adding and make it a big mess. So, but to your other point, where do we see ourselves in 5 or 10 years? Hopefully, still making great content as long as it's still fun for everyone. Hopefully, having more of a presence at conventions. We did have meetups at Origins and Gen Con, and I think that's awesome. But I would like to be at a place where we could host panels, and have serious talks about real issues and do that in panels. I would like to be at a place where our voice is bigger, and we could just do more to be positive. And 5-10 years, maybe there'll be a Punchboard Media Con. That's something we've all joked about as a potential end game, but that's so far away. We're not working on that in any active sense, just as and also it would be so hard because we are so spread apart globally. So, but that would be fun.
Well, I mean, I assume if you have a Punchboard Media Con that you'll hire me as a guest and you'll pay for my accommodation and my travel and all of that stuff. And simply by appearing on our show is a legally binding contract to that effect.
You bet.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for coming on. It's been great, and yeah, I think it's a really interesting development within the board game media thing, and I hope that it implies a ramping up of sort of a sense of community, but also a sense of mission and a sense of.
Well, I have a question for you, Ben. As an outsider, what is your perspective of Punchboard Media?
Well, it's interesting because it seemed to me at the beginning to just be an entity that was the what did you play this week guys? And at first I sort of thought, well, what's the point of this? It's just they already have their podcast. It seems odd. But as it's developed over the last few months, it's pulling in more disparate voices, and it seems to have the aspiration of bringing international people together, but also, you have war game reviewers and you have photographers and you have people who are writing. And it seems to me just a nice place to aggregate all sort of forms of media that you can get, and a one-stop shop. And I think that's by and large a positive thing. Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us, Ben.
And sorry for interrupting your Sundays, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
We love that.